And, you know, when things aren't going well, it is like pretty miserable in pole vault, you know?
It's hard.
It's like just this weird addiction where like you just remember that feeling of like, if you've ever read Mind Gym, kind of like white moments where like everything is just falling into place and going exactly as planned. And like I can name maybe two in my entire career, but I would chase that feeling for forever because it's like the most incredible, like you just feel so in control of everything.
Welcome to the One More Jump podcast. I am here today with special guest Melissa Gergel. Her personal best in the pole vault is 14 feet, 10 3/4 inches. At the club, we round that up to 15 feet. And then she is an Illinois state champion. She's an NCAA Division I national champion for the University of Oregon. She's a Pac-10 champion. 2012 and 2016 Olympic trials qualifier. She's qualified for every U.S. championship between the years of 2009 to 2016. But most of all, she's an awesome person, super nice, and shameless plug, she now coaches at our training facility, Rise Athletic Club. So welcome to the podcast, Melissa. What's up?
Thanks for having me. Not much. How's it going?
Well, actually, it's weird because like there's a lot going, but there's also not a lot going. It's a very strange time in history. I feel very stressed and very not stressed at the same time. It's a very strange situation, but anyway, let's get into it. So tell us a little bit about like your background. And I know you, like we went through high school together, and we, you know, you were a year younger than me, just found that out. And you were pretty elite vaulter in high school, and I was decent in high school as well. So we saw each other in passing, but I don't know much about your background, kind of how you got involved in the sport and things like that. So go ahead and tell the people about that.
So I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago, and I went to Marian Catholic, who did not / does not have pole vault. We have a track team, of course, but no pit, no poles, nothing like that. I had seen it on TV, and I was doing gymnastics at the time and kind of made a snotty comment about, oh, I think I could do that, you know? And kind of knowing that the high school I was going to didn't have it, and it wasn't something that was really going to be possible, you know? And then the athletic director actually called me down to his office and said, hey, Bloom High School, which is about a mile away from Marian, not even, they bought all this new equipment, and they have a coach, and they were wondering if anybody was interested in trying pole vault. So, of course, I jumped at it, and Tim Johnson was the coach there. I showed up the first day, and I was the only person.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's I mean, Tim was an incredible asset to Northern Illinois pole vaulting, and obviously him and his brother Jan were also really, really good pole vaulters in high school. And so you got involved with Bloom, and that club was called Vault Chicago, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm confused. So like you were at a private school with no facilities. So then you were able to, start pole vaulting at,
Yes.
at Bloom at this club. That's pretty cool. That's a testament to the club situation, because you would have never had that opportunity to become this incredible pole vaulter if you would not have had, if Tim would not have opened up that opportunity for you. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. I feel super lucky that everything kind of fell into place during my freshman year. And
so what was like your progression though? Like, so you said your freshman year, you started with Tim
mm-hmm.
at Vault Chicago.
Yep.
And then so how did you progress? Was it like super fast, like you just got really good really quick, or was it kind of a slow grind, or?
Um, you know, I got pretty good pretty quick, honestly.
Yeah.
Tim was really great about just hammering the basics. Like that first day, all I did was like walking and jogging drills. We did not set up a pit. We didn't pole vault at all. Like it was honestly, I left and I was like, oh, I don't know about this. This doesn't seem that fun.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
that's that's kind of crazy. I mean, yeah, that's an interesting point because at our club, what we do is, and you and I have talked about this because you're coaching over there now, is it's like it's a fine line to walk. You don't know if you want to like introduce the kid and get them going right away and get them like addicted and just like, whoa, I love this right away, or you want to start with those walking drills and risk them being like, I'm
yeah.
never coming back here again. you know
Yeah.
so it sounds like he
Luckily,
was more of a walking and nailing down those fundamentals, which, I
yeah.
mean, to be honest with you, that is, I mean, if there was a right and a wrong way, I would say that there's a very strong argument for getting things done off the pit before you go on,
Yeah. Yeah. It was kind of like the carrot like dangling just out of reach, you know?
Right.
like okay, like, we're doing these drills and that's great, but there was always this promise of like we're going to go to the pit someday, you
Yeah,
know?
right. Right, for sure. When was the point that you knew that you were going to be exceptional, that you were going to be like, whoa, okay, this is something that I really feel deeply like I could be one of the best at?
You know, it's weird because even looking back at it and looking back at my pole vault career, all I see is the things that I didn't accomplish and the goals that I didn't reach and all this stuff. So to hear someone like say that my career was exceptional, I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. That's very similar to me too. I think, in a couple of these podcasts I've kind of talked about like, man, I I look back on and a super, just being honest, like kind of in a negative light sometimes. And it is sad because you are the only one who thinks that. You know
Yep.
what I'm saying? Like everybody else like looks at you and they're like, okay, that was a very successful career. And people look at me and they're like, dude, how could you be unhappy with what you were given? You won a state
Yeah.
championship, did the national championships in college, and you got to
Mhm.
experience so many cool things after college. How could you be
Yeah.
disappointed about that? How greedy can you be,
Yeah.
but it's hard whenever you set these big giant goals for yourself and then you don't reach those huge goals. It's hard to
Mhm.
not be negative about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
But so I guess when I started picking it up really quickly, and obviously it was a, a kind of fast but slow progression. At my first meet, I think I jumped like 7 feet or something like that.
Okay.
But it was like every meet I was improving. Just I was so new to it, and I mean you see this in kids at the club. When they're so new, like they make huge progressions really early on. So I think by the end of my freshman year, I was jumping like 11 feet, and I had qualified for state and all that. So, but it was kind of this mindset of like, well, I'm just going to get good at this because I want to get good at it, and I'm going to do everything that I can,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and my family, I think, kind of makes fun of me a little bit because I get so almost like psycho about stuff. Like,
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, that's one of the character traits of somebody who becomes really good at something. You kind of have to have a little bit of an obsessive personality, and like you have to get like very deep into things very easily, and that's I think that's very consistent with a lot of the people that I've come into contact with in elite pole vaulting for sure. Is it's like you know they weren't making, for me personally, I wasn't making like a whole, I had to deny myself of so many things in high school and college. I was, you know, and looking back on it, it's like, that was maybe a little over the top, but anyways, yeah. So your family kind of was like, okay, she's getting a little crazy about this. And so where did it go from there?
I think and it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say about this because your family knows the sport.
Yeah.
My sister was a distance runner and my dad, like, same thing, ran cross country and stuff in high school. But besides that, there are no pole vaulters in my family. Nobody knows anything about it. So
Yeah.
I think they kind of just allowed it to happen and just went with it because they were completely not, like, without knowledge of pole vault. So
Right.
I think in high school they just thought, okay, this is cool. And then when I went away to college, I went to Oregon, so far away from the Chicagoland area, and I would come home and be like, well, I can't do this, we can't go to dinner, I have to go do this workout. And I think that when they were like, okay, Melissa, we get to see you like 3 times a year, so you're going to dinner.
Yeah. So you got pretty deep into it pretty quick. Well, I mean, they had to kind of understand that you had some natural ability because anybody who qualifies for the state meet their freshman year has got a pretty good amount of natural ability at whatever event, they're doing. So they must have recognized, like, whoa, this is actually, she's pretty good at this if she's qualifying for state her freshman year. So I guess they were maybe understanding. For me, it was strange because growing up having my dad be a very accomplished pole vaulter and pole vaulting coach, I had a little bit of a different view of it. I was just talking about this yesterday with somebody, is that whenever I grew up, I did not really like pole vaulting. I actually kind of hated being at the track because, not, I hate's a strong word, but I used to get not drugged to the track, but I was, on my dad's hip at the track all the time. I remember one time he woke me up at like 5 a.m. and we drove over to Purdue so that he could jump. And he had me sitting on his pole bag with some little mini donuts. And, we just sat there and we, just hung out and he jumped in the meet. And so I knew a lot about the event. So like whenever I started, I knew how to pole vault. I knew how to do it. I just hadn't done it yet. And so it was kind of like, okay, my dad was good. He knows a lot about the event. He coaches. He's got a place for me to practice. So I feel like I'm already kind of got a little bit of a head start on being successful at this. So it was not really, I kind of always knew in the back of my head that I could be pretty good at it. It was just like, when am I going to make that decision that I want to be a pole vaulter?
Yeah.
So I guess it's definitely, actually not a little, it's a lot different from you because it sounds like you came from a family of distance runners, but yeah, that, so you went through high school, and obviously a big turning point was probably when you jumped over 13 feet and won the state meet, which speaking of, this is all in Illinois. You already said that. Okay. So we grew up and we were growing up pole vaulting, we didn't really know each other, but we grew up pole vaulting in similar track meets and things like that. So we're representing Illinois today for sure. And so she won a state championship in what year?
2007.
2007. That was your senior year, right?
Yeah, I was runner up in 2006.
Gotcha. So mine were flip-flopped. I won my junior year and then got my tail handed to me my senior year, which was unfortunate. But yeah, so that was a turning point for you. So when did you get to the point to where colleges were starting to reach out and be like, hey, we would like for you to come and vault for us?
Yeah, and this is kind of a funny story too. I had a couple like really small schools start reaching out to me, just people in the area. My sister went to Illinois Wesleyan. and ran track there. That's like in Bloomington, Illinois, you know.
Yeah.
And so they had sent me something in the mail and all that after the state meet my junior year, I think. And then that summer was when I jumped 13 feet, I think, the summer of my junior year. And then a bunch of people started reaching out. But I ended up going to Oregon, and it's kind of funny because I remember my coach saying to me, my high school track coach saying to me, "Oh, like the coaches from Oregon are going to come to your house on Saturday to meet with you." And I was like, "What are you talking about? This is like
Right.
the week of, you know, I've
That's
never talked to
crazy.
them on the phone. I've never done anything." Apparently they had sent me some materials in the mail, you know, old school recruiting,
Oh
like
yeah.
the media guide, you know.
Mhm.
But I had never received them. Somehow, like, they got lost in the mail. I've never talked to these coaches before in my life, and they're like showing up to my house on Saturday that week, and Dan Steele and Vinland and Anna are like sitting in my kitchen, just like talking about Oregon track and field, and I'm totally confused. Like, who are these people?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That must have been so cool though. That must have been cool for you and your family. Like, did you guys, I mean, you said your sister and your dad were distance runners, so obviously they must have known about the University of Oregon, about the prestige
Right.
of the
Yeah.
distance running programs and track and field and things like that. So that must have been cool for everybody at your house.
Yeah, and it's so funny too because after my freshman year of high school, I did summer track, and the Junior Olympics were in Eugene, and I had qualified and gone, you know, and competed at Hayward Field, and totally did not grasp the significance of that at the time. You
All
know,
right.
it's like, oh, this is a cool place. Like, it's really nice here.
Yeah, that's wild. You know what's crazy is we could have actually ended up teammates together at Oregon because you get your 5 official visits. So I took my official visits to um, I took an unofficial to Tennessee, I took an official to Kentucky, an official to UNI, Northern Iowa, University of Alabama, and then my 5th one, I think that was 5. Maybe there was one more. Oh, Washington, University of Washington. And then my 5th one was to University of Oregon. And I was on the phone with the one of the coaches that was recruiting me at the time. And he said, "We're going to put this offer on the table for you right now. We're going to put it on." I had plane tickets to go out to Oregon. I had plane tickets and everything was all set up. And he said, we're going to add like another 10% scholarship onto this offer or whatever. He was like, "But you have to take it right now and you have to cancel your trip to Oregon." And I was like, "Oh no." Cause I mean, I've always wanted to go to Oregon. I've never been to Hayward Field. I've always wanted to go. I love the mountains. Like, so I was so looking forward to this. And I was like, well, I had already taken an official visit to the place that I'm talking about. And I was like, well, I'll just take the extra 10%. And I committed right there. And then I had to call the Oregon coach and be like, "Hey, yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
coming on the trip anymore." So that's crazy because I think that the coach that I was talking to was like, "Hey, if he goes out to Oregon, he's probably never gonna
Oh,
come
yeah.
back."
That's the
So
crazy thing about Oregon, and especially on the men's side, because there's some few scholarships, you know, they can, I mean, it's just the mystique of Oregon
yeah.
track and field, you know what I mean? And they can get like, if they get you there on a visit, it's really hard to say no.
Exactly. And that really is and the coach that I was talking to, he knew that. He was like, "Hey, we're going to offer you a little bit more than we planned, but you got to shut this whole Oregon thing down right now." And I was like, "Dang, this is kind of cutthroat." And so I did that, and that would have been crazy though because then we would have been teammates out there, which would have been even crazier. But who knows where I would have ended up and all these things. I probably would have still been out there in the mountains somewhere in Oregon. But
Yep. It's
now we're here
beautiful.
in beautiful, beautiful Joliet, Illinois. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful this time of year. Yeah, that's a joke. Anyway, so this is something that I kind of wanted to talk to you about too. Have you heard anything about all of the whole, since we're on the subject of colleges and stuff, have you heard anything about like all of the crazy scholarship stuff going on with the athletes and stuff right now with like all the colleges? Like with the,
No,
like how they're losing funding and things like that. Have you heard about any of that?
I haven't. So I'm still very close with my college coach, Jenny Ashcroft. She's at the University of Michigan, so I catch up with her every once in a while. And the last I had talked to her, they were like meeting to discuss whether or not they would allow like the seniors another year of eligibility and all that stuff. And she was saying at the time, like, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with scholarships, because they've promised scholarships to all these incoming freshmen, and now there's extra people left. So
Yeah,
but I
right.
don't know what the resolution was to that. So
Yeah, so there really is no resolution. I mean, obviously, with this whole thing, there is no resolution to anything ever. I feel like it's like one day it's this and the next day it's that. But I've been, because at our club, like one of our big things that we try to do is we try to actively get these kids talking with different universities and things like that. And so I've been reaching out in this off time, like, hey, let's get this going. Let's facilitate a couple relationships with some of the juniors at the club and things like that. But I haven't heard any responses back. And I've been like, man, why can't somebody just shoot me a text and say,
no,
what's
yeah.
going on? But eventually I did get a text back from a Division I coach that was basically like, hey, a lot of us are worried about our jobs. A lot of us are worried about funding. And I was like, I wonder why. And they were like, because if there is no football season,
Right.
there's no scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
Like football funds basically all the other athletics at these big universities. So if they don't have a foot, and like for the NFL, a lot of their money is made in the TV, but
Right.
for NCAA, like the majority of it is made at the gate by these people coming to these games. And so they were like, to be honest with you, there's not a lot of recruiting going on right now because we don't know if we have any scholarships to offer. And even worse, like you had said, we don't know if we're going to have scholarships for the kids that are currently on scholarships.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, that is insane. That is
Yeah.
the craziest thing. I don't know. This whole thing has been nuts. But anyway, so we went through your college. So you going through college, how was that competing? I competed 1 year for a big Division I university, University of Alabama, and it was crazy. A lot of travel, a lot of kind of very not fun things like, hey, jump this high or it ain't no more scholarship, things like that. I know that's not every university, but it was not fun to deal with that. How was your trip through University of Oregon and with all that stuff?
Yeah. So luckily, I was never put in that position where I was given a height and said, if you don't jump this, like your scholarship is getting cut.
You
I
were
was.
also winning a lot too. I gained like 15 pounds and jumped a foot lower than I did in high school. So that might have had something to do with it. I'm just saying. Proceed. Sorry.
Um, I was lucky that I adjusted pretty well to everything, but I think at Oregon, obviously, we had an incredibly successful track team. And so I think one of the things that was very helpful to me was just that everyone around me was just an incredible athlete, winning championships and all this stuff. And so it was kind of like, you don't want to be the one dragging the team down, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so like my whole goal the whole time I was there was just to like contribute to the team. And my freshman year, it's so funny because in 2007, when I was still in high school, I think the Oregon women finished like 7th at Pac-10s or something like that, like not good. And
Not the
then
best, yeah.
yeah, they kind of really started rebuilding the program, and did a great job. So my freshman year, Pac-10s were in Tempe, Arizona. We ended up getting third place as a team, and the men had just won their second title in a row, and they're doing their victory lap, and all of the girls were huddled up, and we were like, we scored 100 points. This is awesome. Like, next year, that's going to be us taking the victory lap. And like, we all just really came together around like the team competition. It was really cool to be a part of. That being said, it was very clear that you were expected to perform, and there were people fighting for spots on the Pac-10 team. You're at a conference championship, you're only allowed so many athletes. So that I know was always an interesting coaches meeting the week before Pac-10s when you're deciding like who's going to Pac-10s.
Yeah, just really quick. So I'm not familiar with Division I rules and everything like that. So at your conference meet, you were allowed a certain number of athletes per event or total?
Per team, total. So I'm not sure what exactly the number was.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you're only allowed a certain number of entries. So it's like, okay, are we gonna? That's the thing with pole vault. That's what makes it hard. Is like, okay, I'm one athlete and I can only compete in one event. So at max, I'm worth 10 points and that's it. So that was things like that were made very clear at Oregon. So you always knew where you stood. And I think that's a hard thing with pole vault in general, with recruiting and scholarship money and stuff like that. You don't see a lot of pole vaulters on a full scholarship because at max you are worth 10 points, whereas if you're a 200-meter runner, you can dabble in the 1, dabble in the 4, you run the 2, you're on all the relays, like you
for sure
work a lot more.
Well, I mean, I didn't know that it was like a certain number of people just per team. So then as a head coach, like you got to be super dialed in and like be very strategic. And I mean, you had mentioned about the scholarship stuff, obviously they're not going to, for 10 points, it's like I can, well, maybe I'll give my scholarship to somebody who can score like 60 points, like, or who can help score like a whole bunch of points. So I'm just curious, have you ever known anybody personally who was on a full ride scholarship division? Like I'm talking about division, what is it? Division I AA or Division 1A? What's like the
1A, I guess, but for
1A?
track, Division 1,
Okay.
So A and AA is more of like a football thing. So
well, no, because like I think it might be for track too, because like I guess if I say, have you ever known anybody who's on a Division I scholarship? I do know somebody who got a full ride to be a Division I pole vaulter. I'm not going to name the school, but they won their conference meet at 12 feet as a male. So I'm like, okay, there's like Division I and then there's Division I. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, University of Oregon. Have you ever known anybody, let's say in, any of the big conferences, Division I conferences, that has been on a full ride pole vaulting scholarship?
I don't know. Certainly not on the men's side. I'm sure I can think of a few girls who probably were, but I don't know for sure.
Okay.
Like my recruiting class for women's pole vault was like insane. Like I was kind of bottom of the top barrel, you know what I mean? Because I was coming out of high school with like Katie Veith and Tori Anthony and Allison, and just like a really incredible recruiting class as far as pole vault goes.
Right.
And they had all jumped. I mean, Katie Veith and Tori had jumped over 14 feet, So I'm like a big loser with a 13-foot jump,
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, because I think that's like a huge misconception with a lot of vaulters is like they'll be like, hey coach, just I want that full ride, man. Let me get that full ride. And I'm like, hey man, I don't know if that full ride, you're gonna have to break the national record if you want a full ride. I mean, I could be wrong. I've never known anybody though, like personally, that has been on a full ride Division I scholarship for solely a pole vaulter, maybe like
I
a heptathlete or decathlete or something, but
mhm.
not just solely a pole vaulter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think at Oregon, especially, no one ever said this to me, like, don't talk about your scholarship or anything like that. But it was like an unwritten rule that those things just weren't discussed,
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah, I mean
which I
it's
think that's
strange. It's like
good.
asking somebody, like it would be like me asking you, "Hey, how much money do you make?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
strange. You're not like allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Some people are super open about it. I guess I'll be open about mine. You don't have to be open about yours. Please keep yours confidential. I'm just for the people. So I jumped 16 feet 7 inches in high school. I was coming out of high school. I was ranked 6th in the country, and I received 60%, which I think was very,
Yeah.
very generous. And that's why whenever I had that opportunity to take that 60% or to go to on that visit to Oregon, I was like, yeah, I'm going to take the 60% because I hadn't been offered really anything close to that up to
Mhm.
that point. So I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and take this. And I mean, other places that I really, really wanted to go, I won't mention them, but we're like, we'll give you books. Yeah, we'll hit you with some
Right. Yeah.
books, and well, let's do 2 G's a year, 2 G's a
Yeah.
year in books. And I'm like, what? I was like, I was under the assumption I was going to be getting something really good. My goal was to be top 10 in the country coming into, being recruited as a top 10 athlete, vaulter in the country. And yeah, they were offering me books.
Yeah. I think
Crazy.
what's so crazy about that is like thinking about the Oregon men's track team and just how many scholarships a men's track team has. I feel like it's like 8 or something like that. And
Yeah. It's
like
12. It's
12.
12 and then girls get 18, I think. I could
Okay,
be
okay.
wrong though. Could be wrong.
Yeah. So you think of like a track roster, there's probably 50 people on the roster. And like the people that were on the men's team when I was in school are like Matthew Centrowitz, gold medalist,
Yeah, right.
Andrew Feeding, 2-time Olympian, like crazy, crazy, Galen Rupp,
Right.
um, just these like huge names. And
Yeah.
I don't know what their scholarships were, but I know they weren't on full rides.
Isn't
And
that
this,
crazy? You're talking
yeah,
about three of the best distance runners, definitely I'm some of the best distance runners ever. And it's
mhm,
like, hold on, what?
yeah.
They weren't on full ride scholarships. I mean, who knows
I
what they
mean,
were on, but that's
right.
crazy.
I'm guessing they weren't on full
Right,
ride
right, 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 right.
because of the depth of that team, like
They probably weren't
because
on books,
right,
but
yeah,
but they were not
yeah,
on a full ride at the same
yeah,
time. Maybe,
yeah,
possibly. All
yeah,
speculation, but
yeah. It is. I really don't know, but
right.
just based on the depth of that team while I was there, like I know they couldn't all be on full rides just because there's not enough,
Right.
So maybe some of them were by the end of their careers at Oregon, but I don't know. I just don't see how that could be possible and still being able to like recruit the top recruits.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and just to be clear for the people who don't understand this, she's saying that there are 12 scholarships per team, not per year. Like there are 12 scholarships that are divided amongst the entire track team. That's just what they get at all times. So like you give like Melissa, a 0.5, and then you give me a 0.5, that's one scholarship. And then those 2.5s, they're not available again until we both graduate. And that is what people don't understand is how, and then if you get like you're talking about the depth of that Oregon track team, if you want to be a part of a national championship team like that, you have to be willing to be like, all right, I know that I could go over here and I could probably get an 80 or 90% scholarship. But if I want to be a part of a national championship track team, I'm going to have to kind of maybe take that 30 or 40% or 20 or whatever, so that I'm able to do that, which honestly, at the end of the day is probably a good decision because like you were talking about earlier, the prestige of University of Oregon track and the support of its athletes, kind of post collegiately, with especially in distance running with some of those
Yeah.
programs out there. It'll end up paying for itself in the end.
Mhm.
You'll
Yeah.
end up being able to, to do some other things, which,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so that's crazy, to think about all of that stuff. So what was the hardest part about going through college and kind of balancing everything? Because actually tell the people like what you do now and what your major was and things like that.
Yeah, so I was a human physiology major in college. I ended up graduating in 3 years. And so my fourth year of eligibility, I started a master's degree in human physiology, which that took me 2 years. So I finished that in 2012. Um, and then I competed post collegiately for 6 years.
Yeah.
Ended up dabbling in some winter sports, got hurt, and
I
frantically
didn't know
applied.
about that. Let's hear about that. I never knew that. What's going on with that?
Yeah. So Dan Steele, who probably recruited you to Oregon,
Sounds
he
familiar. Yeah.
yeah, he ended up at UNI and then Iowa State. But he recruited me to Oregon. Him and his brother were bronze medalists, I think, in bobsled. And his twin brother is now the CEO of USA Bobsled and Skeleton. And after the 2012 Olympic trials, Coach Steele was like, Melissa, you got to try this. Like, you'd be so good. You'd love it, And at that point, I had gotten seventh at the trials. And I was like, nah, I'm going to go another 4 in track, like, whatever.
Yeah.
And 2016 rolls around, and leading up to the Olympic trials, like, basically everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. I ended up no hiding at the trials. Arguably the worst day of my life.
Oh boy. Yeah.
But Coach Steele called me about a week later and was like, "Come on, are you going to go to Lake Placid? Like, you got to try this." So I ended up going to Lake Placid and doing skeleton during like the winter of 2016, 2017.
Is that the head first or the feet
Yeah.
first? The head first?
Yeah, it was awesome.
No way,
By
man.
far the coolest thing I have ever done. It's amazing.
Oh, that's awesome.
That being said, I had a pretty gnarly crash, and I ended up separating my AC joint and needing to have some emergency surgery on my leg.
How did
um,
I not know about this? This is crazy.
I don't know. But yeah, so when all this is happening, I'm like panicking because at this point, I guess I'm probably 27, maybe 28, I don't know. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? Like, I have no skills.
I'm a skeleton rider and now I can't even skeleton ride.
Yeah. So at the time I was still pole vaulting and like going back and forth to Lake Placid when I could.
Yeah.
But so I thought my pole vault career was going to be over because of my shoulder. And so I like signed up and took the GRE like a month after my crash and started applying to PA school. I ended up getting in, but I also ended up being totally fine. I was able to pole vault again, and I even went back to Lake Placid and did some skeleton after my crash.
Good for
But I
you.
decided it was time to be an adult and went to PA school. So now I'm a PA in general surgery.
That's what's up. Yeah, that is crazy. Like I've actually heard like sometimes I would get emails from these Winter Olympic people like, hey, we're looking for people to do the bobsled or do these things. And I always thought it was like spam. But so
No.
it turns out it's the real deal, man.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
awesome. Like a very cool experience.
How do you
I
like?
cannot.
I don't understand. Like, what's the learning curve on something like that? You don't just bomb it your first day, right?
No, no, no. So they have like you do a combine to see if you can like qualify, and I
What
actually,
kind of things are they looking for? Speed,
mostly it's
obviously.
like speed stuff. So you do like, I think it's like a 30, um, and a 30-meter fly, as well as some other running stuff. You do an overhead shot toss. I think they do cleans, squats, and I know that there's got to be more stuff than that. Oh, like maybe a standing triple jump. Yeah. Anyways, but I had to, because I missed the combine because of the Olympic trials and everything in 2016. I drove down to like just outside of Atlanta and just did like a one-on-one combine with one of the coaches. And
Whoa.
it was like embarrassingly bad. Honestly, like I'm sure like it met their standards or whatever, but it was not the most athletic I have ever looked, I'm sure. So, then they do like a push camp in Lake Placid. And then once it gets cold out, you go there and they have different starts. So start 1 is obviously like the top. And then 2, 3, and 4. So you start at start 4, and they just kind of push you. You're not like running start kind of deal. And it kind of lets you learn the track like a little bit at a time, and as you go up, you gain more speed, that kind of thing.
So how do you steer one of those things? Like, is it like those old red sleds that you just go down the sled hill on? Like,
it's kind of similar to that. Honestly, it wasn't what I was expecting. You think like bobsleds have more of like the runner that you would think of, where it almost looks like a blade, but skeleton sleds, their runners are actually like kind of like tubes that have little spines on them. But it is kind of that traditional sled shape, it's almost like a giant lunch tray with these like runners on the bottom of it.
There you go. The old giant lunch tray.
Yeah, and you steer using like pressure on your shoulders and on your knees. And then you can also drag your toes, but obviously that's not the recommended steering because it slows you down. So
Right. Wow, that's very interesting. Do you have any regrets on that, or?
No, not really.
Yeah, it seems really cool.
My one regret is that I didn't go after the 2012 trials, because I think that I could have been good at it. I think I could have been good. So
yeah, interesting. Okay, so let's dive into between 2012 and 2016. So why would you choose skeletoning over pole vaulting between 2012 and 2016? Like, did you just have a rough few years, or I don't know much about your post collegiate career. I know you were very good. Obviously, you jumped at every U.S. championship from 2009 to 2016, which is insane.
Yeah,
but
the
outdoor ones, yeah. But so in your post collegiate career, like when you were dabbling in that, like why, like were you just fed up with vaulting, or you just weren't having the success you wanted?
So 2012, I was still training at the University of Oregon. I was in grad school. It actually worked out perfect. Like I walked in my graduation ceremony and got my hood, and then literally 7 days later, I competed at the Olympic trials or something like that. It was something crazy. Like,
wow, yeah.
And I stayed with my college coach, Jenny Ashcroft, who, like I said, is now at the University of Michigan. There ended up being some coaching changes at Oregon. She ended up at Cal Poly. So I followed her to San Luis Obispo and trained at Cal Poly for 2 years. It's like such a beautiful place. And, I feel like I really didn't take advantage of that when I was there training. But
so were you like a hermit? Like, were you just like, I train, I eat, I sleep, I don't do anything else?
Well, kind of, but it was Running Warehouse, which is like an online running store.
Yeah.
In San Luis Obispo. So the owner there was awesome, and they gave me a job in customer service. So I was just like answering phones. But we would open at 6 a.m. Because of like the East Coast people, so I would work from like 6 a.m. to noon, and then I would go home and eat lunch, and then I would go to practice. And I mean, most of the people listening to this are probably familiar. The pole vaulters are like the first to get there and the last to leave, you know, because you're doing a pretty extensive warm up, and then you have a vault session, and then you do a running workout, and then you lift and like all this stuff. So you're just there for forever. So I would, I would like leave practice and just be totally exhausted, and I would have to get up early the next morning to go to work. So
Right.
I would just like make dinner and go to bed, you know. So I think when I was in California, it wasn't an ideal situation for me because I had no life outside of my job and pole vault.
Right.
And I think
Were there any friends there that you were training with, like training partners that you got along with, or no?
I mean, so I trained with the college kids. So I was like a volunteer assistant, and they were great, but it was very clear, like, you're here as a volunteer assistant. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to go hang out with them on the weekend when they're all partying and doing their thing.
Yeah,
You know?
no house parties for you. Or
No house
anything
parties
like
for me.
that.
So that was
Hey,
hard.
coach is here. Coach is here.
Generally frowned upon. But that was hard for me. I think the happiness factor is hugely underestimated in post-collegiate athletics. Like, if
Yep.
you are miserable, you will not jump high.
For sure.
So.
For sure. We actually we had Jeff Hartwig on our most recent one that was released, and he was talking about down there in Jonesboro whenever they were just popping off, you know, just tons of really good people. And I think that probably played into it a lot. They had a good training group, you know, they had a really good training group, and it seemed like they all got along. And when you have that, it's hard not to get better. You know, you got a lot of support. You got your friends are people that you're training with and you're hanging out. And I think that is severely underestimated too, because like when I got out of school, people think that it's just a big time party and we're having fun. We're going to these big meets, this and that and the other. For me, it was the opposite. It was very, very lonely. It was, I was at the track by myself. I'm running sprints by myself. I'm vaulting with me and my dad, which I love my dad, but not super hype environment, you know, with just me and my dad jumping. It's like, you know, and it was hard. And I always felt like in post-collegiate pole vaulting, I was trying to fit in. I was always trying to make sure that everybody liked me. Make sure, like, hey, what's up? You know, I'd get to a big meet and hey, what's up? Knowing that I don't even know this person personally, like, but just pretending like we're friends because we were on the, you know, post-collegiate circuit or whatever. And it was so strange. It's such a strange time. You know, you go up and you're like, hey, you know, high five, and then nobody gives you a high five, and you're like, okay, this sucks, man. So I don't know. So you're in Cal Poly and you're kind of just like a loner, sounds like.
And I, you know, I feel like this is just like a giant Jenny Ashcroft plug. You know?
Shout out Jenny Ashcroft. We got
awesome.
some good girls coming up. We got some good girls coming up at the club, Jenny.
Yeah, I mean, she's doing a great job at Michigan, and they've recruited a ton of awesome athletes this year. So props to her. But
for sure.
She, I think that she felt bad for me. You know, like, I think she was like, "Oh goodness!" Like she said to me, like, "You need to make a change." Like, she came to me and said that, you know, and really encouraged me to look for other options, and really helped me sort through what those options were, and helped me, you know, talk to different coaches everywhere else. And I think, like, I have nothing but good things to say about her. She's just incredible and really cares about her athletes. Like, I mean,
you're very lucky that you had that opportunity to have that person in your life, that positive person in your life, because some kids go through their whole athletic career without that person, you know. So that's definitely, you know, shout out to her for sure. So continue. Sorry.
So I ended up deciding to move to Tennessee, which is funny because you were saying that was one of your options when you were looking at schools and stuff. UT obviously has just a crazy history in the men's pole vault. Like, I think that they have more Olympic medals than most countries. As far as like in the pole vault, like Coach B. Miller has like this presentation that talks about it and stuff. It's just a really incredible place for pole vault that I think people don't necessarily think about.
Right.
But I ended up training with Tim Mack there from the fall of 2014 through 2016 or through 2017, I guess. And, you know, it was really nice to be in an elite group. I had awesome training partners and that kind of thing. But I mean, towards the end, like I said, in 2016, leading up to the Olympic trials, like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. You know, I got dumped 2 weeks before the Olympic trials, and was just heartbroken, you know, and I had never really been dumped like that before. So.
Right. Yeah. So was this person like, they were out in Tennessee with you then? Or
he was in North Carolina, but
okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And then I broke a pole for the first time ever in my life, like a week and a half before I left for the Olympic trials.
Oh, wow.
So like ultimate messed up mind going in.
Yeah, for sure. You got to get that broken pole in early. You got to get that in when you're young. So you can't be waiting until you're in your late 20s to break your first pole. You got to get it done young.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I'm like super thankful. I didn't realize how rare that was to like go almost all of your career without ever breaking a pole. It's very unfortunate that it happened when it did. And it was just like it got dinged or spiked or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, no, I did at the Olympic trials, and I was like, I need to get away from this for a little bit. So.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like after that, you said that was like one of the worst days of your life. Mm-hmm. So how are you transitioning into this whole like no pole vaulting as far as being an athlete goes? Like how's that transition been?
Yeah,
it was a train wreck for me. I'm just saying. So
yeah,
go ahead.
I think I was really lucky in that, you know, I ended up being okay after that crash, and I kind of started training again and jumped in a couple meets, and kind of at this point I had gotten into PA school but hadn't started yet, and had this like wonderful idea about how I'm going to train and go to PA school and it's going to be great, you know, and very quickly it was like, nope, this is not going to work. PA school is probably the hardest thing that I've ever done. It was 2.25 years of just hell, honestly. I don't know if I'm allowed to
just let it out.
It's very hard. And so I had to stop pole vaulting in order to get through that. But it gave me something to immediately like throw all of my energy towards, you know? So, I think that was a blessing, but now that I'm not in school and I'm not pole vaulting and all of the gyms in Illinois are currently closed, it's kind of like,
right,
what do I do? You know?
It's been tough. Go ahead. So like, so you stopped, so you would say that your official retirement was when?
I don't know. I really never officially.
Hey, there is no official retirement. Hey, we got poles over at the club right now. You could get your spikes and drive over there right now. It's only like a 20-30 minute drive for you. So we're ready to rock. I'll go over there and help you out. I'll catch your step.
When all of this like came together, and when I moved from Tennessee, I had to go get my poles, you know, and I was like thinking to myself, you know, like I have these poles, like what if I randomly like find a place to jump? Like, is that something that I'd want to do? You know, kind of just thinking about it. And then of course everything fell into place at the club, and and I was like, but
It's always there. I mean, I would be lying to you if I said like I've never thought about like, okay, yeah, good job, Jake. Now you have a place where you can pull vault anytime you want. Good job, man. But I reference the Hartwig podcast again. We were talking to him, and he was talking about how that is what's cool about our sport. Is he was saying, if I wake up this morning and I feel like I'm feeling spry again, I can go and try to make the U.S. team if I want,
yeah,
and he's, in his mid 40s. So it's like, I don't know. It's pole vaulting's strange because they say, a peak of maybe like a sprinter might be like early 20s or something. But the peak
yeah,
of a pole vaulter is actually quite a bit later than that. And I mean, there are multiple people that are jumping pole vaulting into their 30s, and Jeff and Derek both were
yeah,
really good pole vaulters into their 40s.
yeah.
I think Derek was into his 40s. But anyway, it's always open, and you got a key, so go on in and
my, I
yeah.
was like telling my sister this. I'm like I'm mostly joking, but I'd be lying if I said that I don't think about pole vaulting sometimes.
Yeah.
But I was talking to my sister about it, and like I said, my family thinks that I was like nuts and just like a crazy person. And when things aren't going well, it is like pretty miserable in pole vault.
It's hard.
It's like just this weird addiction where like you just remember that feeling of like if you've ever read Mind Gym, kind of like white moments where like everything is just falling into place and going exactly as planned. And like I can name maybe two in my entire career, but I would chase that feeling for forever because it's like the most incredible, like you just feel so in control of everything.
Right.
But I was talking to my sister about it, and she was like, please no, Melissa, please don't do that.
Well, that's true though, because the stress that it puts on you is just part of it. Because if you're involved, if you have a family member who is involved as you and I were,
Mhm.
it becomes their stress too.
Yeah.
And that's what was hard for me whenever I had my first child. Whenever I had Lacey, I was like, all right, I'm going to keep jumping. Um, but slowly, when the times were good, they were good. I have a good day and my daughter's there. This is so cool. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, my wife's here, my daughter's there. I just pole vaulted and had a good day. I won the track meet. This is great. This is a surreal moment right now.
Mhm.
But, and this is how I always, kind of explained it. But whenever that blanket of negativity just kind of covers your life, um, it can get pretty dark, and it can
Mhm.
get very, very demoralizing and very, I guess just all encompassing. It just covers your whole life. No matter what good happens, if I'm not vaulting well, I just don't feel complete and feel good, and I could win the lottery and I still don't feel good,
Yeah, they'd be like, well, I still didn't jump 15 feet. So,
right. So and that's where it's at, and that's where I think for me personally, um finding that area that I could feel good and feel like just as motivated as I was whenever I was an athlete, it was very important. And for me, obviously, that's my business, my club. Like I feel like that sense of closure. Like
Mhm.
I'm done, man. I'm done. I might mess around for the kids one time every once in a while. Maybe I was actually kicking around the idea of trying to train for that VaultCon thing that Chip was
Oh,
going to put
yeah.
on. Yeah, because I was like, that looks kind of cool. But then that
Yeah.
got canceled or rescheduled.
Reschedule.
And I was able to have that sense of closure because now I have a new mission.
Mhm.
And it's hard to have that sense of closure when you don't have and to
Yeah.
come to peace with it. Like I was able to come to terms with it, but it took a while. And
Mhm.
I was grasping at straws, like trying to feel like I had come to peace with it. I was doing ultra marathons. I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff just to like prove to myself that I was good, like, and it's like,
Yeah.
dude, you are good, man. You don't, pole vaulting is, we always say pole vaulting is just pole vaulting. And,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's easier said than done, because when you get deep
Exactly.
into it, like you and I were, and like a lot of people are, it is hard to let it down. It
Yeah.
is hard to let it down. So where are you at right now? Where's your head at right now with the whole thing?
I mean, um, obviously, like everything's a little bit different now because of the current situation. But
For sure.
going into this year, like I graduated PA school in December, and was like looking for jobs and like hadn't gotten one yet. And I was talking to Kelsey Abbey, who was my training partner in Knoxville, and she was like, why don't you just start pole vaulting? Like, you can make it to the trials. I'm like,
I think you could.
Do not put these ideas in my head. Like, and it's just thinking about it. Like, if I were to try to like make a comeback, or if I had decided that's what I wanted to do, like my whole goals and mindset would have to change, And
For sure.
yeah.
What you would have to do, and pardon me for interrupting it, this just like kind of just sparked a little spark in me. Like you would have to let go of every way that you've trained in the past and be
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, do I have 24 hours a day to train anymore? Like
Yeah.
in college? No, I don't. Like all you were doing back then, I mean, you were studying hard and stuff like that, but it
Yeah.
was just like, okay, my mission is school and jump. That's it.
Yeah.
Like you were able to dedicate your life to it basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly over
And you
time,
had every resource at your fingertips. Yeah.
every resource. Right. So it would just have to be like, you could almost do it like this. And this is how I, because whenever I got out of college, I went through like 4 years, 4 years of real bad struggles. And then I was like, okay, dude, I kind of had to knock myself over the head. You're not going to be able to train like you have been. You've got a wife, you've got a house, you've got a full-time job as a teacher, so it's like, dude, do you really think that you're going to be able to do this the same way?
Mm-hmm.
It can be done. It would just have to be done in a completely different way. It would have to be super quality over quantity. You're not going to be able to spend, 2-3 hours at the track like you used
Right.
to. It'd be like, hey, I got 45 minutes. Let's bang this out and then, get back home, eat,
Yeah.
go to bed, and, do your thing. But anyway, that's it could be done. And I mean, if you believe in it, I mean, I'm not telling, you got the key to a pole vaulting facility. So it's there for you. It's there for you if you ever want to use it, and that's, I don't know. Too bad this wasn't like 4 years ago, because then it would have been a lot different.
Yeah. Yep. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, the further away I get from, the last time I competed, the more I can kind of appreciate the things that I did accomplish. But I mean, I think, in right now, there's not a ton of like live sports on or anything like that. So I've been totally obsessed with the Michael Jordan, The Last Dance documentary and all that. And, kind of growing up in the middle of that stuff certainly helps. But just seeing like Michael Jordan's mindset, like there's pieces of it that I can really relate to. And like at some point I just need to recognize like what I did accomplish and kind of just be at peace with that. I mean, because you hear him talking about well, we would have won another one, and just like how his mindset with everything, and like how he would kind of like make up little things to give him motivation, different people that he didn't like the way they talked to him or whatever, and
Right.
I just, that takes so much energy to be like that.
Yeah,
So,
it does. And
so
I mean, you don't think that his family dealt with him being
yeah.
crazy? I mean, his stress was his family's stress too, like, so that's the other thing. And for me personally, from just an outsider's perspective, you had an incredible career, and I mean, I never went to an Olympic trials. You went to two, you know, like I would have loved to go to an Olympic trials. I've always, one of my biggest dreams has been to jump at Hayward Field. You spent 4 years jumping at Hayward Field, you know, like,
Yeah.
and I've never gotten to do that, you know, and I'm not trying to compare the two, but I'm just saying, like, you've done an incredible job. But now I think personally, I think you have a lot more to offer the pole vault world than just the athletic side of things. Because I've seen you work with the kids at the club, and you're an incredible coach. You're incredibly fun to be around, and the kids love you. So like, that was my kind of outlet, and that was how I was able to come to terms with it. And I think personally that you have a lot more to offer this community that you don't even know about yet. You know, I didn't know about this. The last thing, whenever I finished pole vaulting, I said, I never want to speak the words pole vault out of my mouth ever again. Don't talk to me about pole vaulting. Don't talk to me about my career. Don't talk to me about anything that have to do with pole vaulting. And then all of a sudden, something happened, like a flip switch, and it was like, okay, now I am very deeply involved in pole vaulting again, in a whole different
Yeah.
you know, aspect. And I love it, and it's so much fun. And you know, I think you and I and my brother and my dad are going to be able to create some opportunities for kids at the club that are going to be, we're going to be able to see their faces, and be able, you have knowledge in your head right now that is going to help somebody so much someday. And that is, I find that to be, you know, pretty rewarding or whatnot. So
Thank you. I feel really lucky that I was very lucky to have really awesome coaches throughout my career, whether it be, you know, Tim in high school, who was just great and super encouraging, and I don't know, just awesome. And then in college, I worked with Jenny, and then my strength and conditioning coach in college, Coach Rad. He's like my favorite person in the world. I like get so excited when I would go to meets and he would be there with like some of the Oregon people or whatever. And he is just like a fountain of knowledge for sprint stuff, and obviously it's strength and conditioning, like awesome. And then of course Tim Mack, like everybody knows the name, Olympic gold medalist. He, you know, one thing that I took away from him is he had such like a regimented approach to training, you know, and I think sometimes that's just what you need. And he was another one that was really heavy on the drills, which when you're in it, it's not the most fun thing, but they're great drills. And I was talking to you about maybe starting to incorporate some of that to the training at the club and all that. So
for sure. Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, there's things that we have yet to learn from you, and that's what I'm excited about. Is I'm excited to learn from you and to learn from your experiences and be able to, you know, translate into success with these coaching these young people. One thing that I was just curious, I know we got to go here pretty soon, but what do you think could help the state of post-collegiate support in the United States?
Well, that's a good question. You know, I think the hard thing about training post-collegiately is, like we talked about, pole vault does require such a time commitment. And it makes it very difficult to have a job and train the way that you want to, and not live like a total poor person. You know what I mean? Like, right. I think if you're not making teams, you're not really getting any help, you know, which that could be a whole other podcast, you know, but
a whole podcast for sure.
Yeah. So I think having a place to train that would be, you know, easily accessible, lots of opportunities for part-time work, and an inexpensive place to live, that's kind of like the trifecta, you know?
For sure.
Yeah, but
So yeah, yeah, and that's something like we were talking about earlier. It's very similar to that scholarship situation. So you look at like these Division I athletes, it's like, wow, they just won a national championship. And from an outsider's perspective, they're like, wow, it must be nice to be on that full ride scholarship, you know, blah blah blah.
yeah,
Little do they know what is actually happening. And
right.
it's the same thing with post collegiate pole vaulting. Is it's like, you know, you and I have seen people living on couches and, you know, couch surfing all around the United States, and it is
Yeah,
not glamorous. I mean, it's terrible. And we're not talking about, you know, just Melissa or I. We're talking about gold medalists. We're talking about people who have won like Olympic gold medals and who have been on multiple, you know, national teams like U.S. teams, world championships, Olympics. These people don't even the best of the best. You would assume they're doing really well and they're going home to their nice houses and maybe got a nice car in the garage. And the
yeah,
reality is they're probably rolling up in a beater with their poles strapped to the side, like, hey man, I heard there was a place to pole vault, you
yeah,
know. Like that's the reality of post collegiate pole vaulting for the overwhelming majority. And it's really hard because a lot of times these colleges are like, hey, you know, we got you through these 4 years, have a great day, you know, we'll see you
yeah,
later. And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, I want to keep training. Ah, well, you can't keep training. You know, you can keep training somewhere else. Can't
Yeah,
train here though, you know?
yeah,
So it's hard. And I feel, I don't know, I feel like we can do a better job, which is something that like I think that you're going to be able to help me with is
mm,
I want a place for post collegiate pole vaulters to be able to come and train and get a part-time job and live inexpensively and be able to make a real solid effort at
it-
making these US teams and having a good quality of life at the same time,
yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
okay, favorite pastime
Oh,
now, like what would, like if you were to do anything, if you didn't have to go to work today, what would you do?
oh, I've been reading a lot, but that's boring.
Oh, I read all the time. What are you reading?
No, actually, I have
Okay.
become very into like gardening and plants and things like that, which is kind of really dorky,
Wow.
especially since I live in an apartment. But like, I started tomatoes from seed and like all this stuff, so I'm very into that right now.
Yeah, it's like working the land
Yeah.
in the apartment. That's outstanding. So what do you got growing? You got them under grow lights or just by the windows or
No, so actually, it's funny. I have like a 3-year-old niece, and I was talking to my sister about different activities they can do. And I had seen it must have been on Pinterest or something like people started seedlings like in egg cartons, you know?
Oh,
And so
cool.
I was
Yeah, I've
like,
seen that.
yeah, I was telling my sister, oh, you should do this, whatever. And then I like finished a carton of eggs, and I was like, I'm gonna do this. You know?
Yeah.
So I just like planted seeds. I had seeds from when I lived in Tennessee that somehow I thought were important enough to bring to Illinois. And so I like rummaged through my stuff, found them, and started seedlings. So I just had them in the egg carton, and I set it on my windowsill. So
That's
it worked.
cool. Yeah, yeah. Um, this is where are you gonna plant them though?
I bought a few pots. I'm gonna give some to my sister because I've been doing obviously a lot of reading about tomatoes. And,
As you
uh,
should. Yes.
yeah, you're not supposed to plant like a bunch of the same of them in one pot. So um, yeah, I have a couple, but
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
cool. All right. Favorite music, like favorite song or favorite artist,
Ooh, I
genre.
I really like everything. You know, living in Tennessee, there was like a lot of country music going on. Um,
Hmm.
for like pole vault purposes and like getting pumped up, I really like like some rap, like some
I could see
hardcore rap.
that. I can see that. Whenever someone looks at you, they could definitely see really just gangster hardcore rap for sure.
And then So in the OR, when we're operating, they always have music on, and the surgeons get to pick the music. But I really like when they have like the classic rock station on when we're
Yeah.
operating. So.
Yeah. So you could probably get into like a zone
Yeah.
whenever you're, so
Mhm.
that's actually very interesting that the surgeon gets to pick the station. So like they they get into that zone with the music, and
Mhm.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, Melissa, this has been awesome. Speaking of the OR, I think you got to get out of here and
Yep, I
go to
gotta
the
go.
OR. So, well, it's been a pleasure. Before we get out of here, though, where can people follow you at?
I think all of my social media is just like at Melissa Gergel. I know that's my Instagram is at Melissa Gergel. I have a Twitter that I don't really use a ton, and I think that one might be at mgergel. I don't really
Yeah,
know.
well, if you don't use it, if there's like one post
Yeah,
on it.
yeah, probably don't follow that because it's old.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. You're awesome. I'm just completely honored that you are coaching at the club now, and that you would come on and talk for a little bit with me. I really appreciate it, and I just wish you the best. And if you're ever trying to pole vault, just hit me up and head
Sounds
on over
good.
there. All right. All right,
Awesome.
Melissa. We'll catch you later. All right.